This is a video that actually illustrates some of the skills that were demonstrated in the last video that you viewed. The intent of this is to show off some of the tools in PowerPoint that are simple to use, but I want to preface this by saying that if there's something you want to be able to do in PowerPoint, and I didn't cover it here, that doesn't mean it's not possible. It just means you need to go online and look for an answer, and most of the time either someone via Microsoft or somewhere else has gone online and written out or put out even a video of explicit instructions on how to make PowerPoint do something. By the way, just so you know, the same applies for Excel or Word or any of the Microsoft products. The beauty of the internet is sort of a blessing and a curse. There's everything you could ever want. This also means there's a lot of uncontrolled, unregulated, well, not good content out there. So you have to sort of weed through what's good and what's not. So I often try to focus on results that come from, say, a Microsoft-based website or something like that, so that I feel like I'm getting some reliable information. But there are plenty of good videos out there on YouTube or other random places that demonstrate how to use specific tools in Microsoft programs. So I'm going to start off by showing you how to use the SmartArt function in PowerPoint. So when you start a new PowerPoint, this is what it looks like, right? You have the blank screen and you're typically on the Home tab. But let's say you wanted to put in maybe a timeline or a graphic or something of that sort to help demonstrate a piece of information. You would simply click on this tab up in the corner for Insert, and then you click on SmartArt. And this is one of the really cool things that PowerPoint does, because it really does a lot of the work for you in terms of formatting. Let's say we were going for a timeline. Most of these at the top here, as I scroll down, you'll see are not necessarily time oriented, but as we get down a little bit further, the big arrow, that's a timeline. You could definitely structure that as a timeline. This arrow definitely could be structured as a timeline. These chevron based processes, those could be used as a timeline. So just for the sake of picking one, we'll pick the basic timeline here and hit OK. And what happens is that it puts that into Microsoft PowerPoint. And I'm just going to quickly pull out the title and the subtitle just so we have the clean screen here. So when you're looking at the SmartArt, you can type in here, or you can type inside the box on the left, which won't display on your screen in your finished product. It's just there to assist you in entering the information that you want on your timeline. So if we put in here, we're going to go super simple here, thing 1, and then the next thing that happens is thing 2, and so on. If I wanted more than 3 things on my timeline, if I'm typing over here, I can just hit enter and it will automatically populate the next point in time on your timeline, and you can continue that way to the extent that you need to use the different points in time on your timeline. So I'm going to close this section and show you how to use some other things in SmartArt that will make this a little prettier, because right now it's kind of plain Jane, not a whole lot going on. By the way, most of the time when you use a SmartArt graphic, it's a good idea to sort of expand out the box to fill up most of the screen, and that way you get the biggest possible graphic on your screen. But when you put in SmartArt, you'll see you get a new option up top here that pops up for a new menu. If you click on that new menu, now you can see, let's say I look at this and I go, I just really don't like the way this arrow looks. It doesn't communicate what I want it to. You can just change the SmartArt format just by clicking through the options that are up here, and it will take the information you've already entered and put it into the various different available options that are out there. The other way you can jazz it up is to change the colors. So you could change it to green. There's usually a multicolored option, although I don't see one on this one. There it is. So you can change the colors to multicolored. This is a blue background, a purple background, green, so on and so forth. The really nice thing about this is as you hover, it actually shows you what it will look like, so you can kind of play with it and see as you go. In addition to being able to change the color, you can also change things about the SmartArt graphic itself. So you see here, it outline around those circles, which makes them stand out more. You could also do things like change the opacity of those, change them to a very definitive solid color, so on and so forth, depending on what you want it to look like. And there are actually a lot of options in here. And again, that hover feature is really cool because you can see what it's going to look like as you change it. So I actually liked the one here where you have sort of the shadow behind those points, and those points look like they're almost in the third dimension. So super easy to use, very easy to manipulate, and you can add all kinds of information. And I'm going to just add a new slide here and pull out what it starts with. And I'm going to go to Insert, SmartArt again, just to sort of scroll through and show you some of the other options that are out there, because there really are a bunch of different options. So you could look at, you know, how does a group of information come into one place and then get sorted out into an end result? How does, you know, some of these are related to math, which of course means I know nothing about them and have no ability to explain them to you. But you have things like a funnel, you know, how to talk to people about how does a group of information get weeded down into the best information. And then you have things like cycles. How does something work in a particular process? I've used a graphic similar to this to illustrate, you know, how all the testimony links to one another, and you can just put talking points in each of those spots. So there really are just a whole bunch of really great graphics that you can use in here. And again, they're all sort of plug and play. You just pick the one that works best for you and use it, fill in the information, manipulate it until it's the appropriate color and style that you're looking for, and ta-da, all the work is done for you. So SmartArt is a really fantastic and easy to use tool in Microsoft PowerPoint. So the next thing I'm going to cover with you is how to manipulate pictures, because we often, you know, in today's day and age, it's hard to know what is genuine and what has been manipulated, but sometimes you need to manipulate a picture. Let's say we put a picture in of a calendar here, right? So this is last year's calendar. You could do several things with this calendar to make it look better on the screen. One of the first things I want to point out to you are the options you have up top here to frame the picture so that it has good background. And we're going to talk about this in regard to callouts as well, which I'm going to cover next. But you see the difference in effect that it has from this to this, right? It really makes it pop on the screen. It draws specific attention to it. And the great thing about these automatic features is that they don't cover up any of the photo content. So it's still showing the full picture. It's just adding a border around it to add emphasis. And so you could put that border in there, and then from this draw down menu here, you can select a different color for that if you wanted it to be a different color, or if you didn't like it so thick, you could change the weight and make it a little thinner, or you could keep it at its maximum, or you can even change it to a different style, which frankly looks a little weird in this particular instance, but it might be applicable in some circumstances. So I'm going to leave that alone just the way it is, but just so you know, you can change the border there. You can also change the way the picture sits on the page and the way the shadow looks. So if I sort of click around here, you can see that shadow moving, and depending on what you're doing, you may want the shadow to be there or not be there. I think most of the time it looks a little strange unless you have some specific purpose for it. And then of course you have options like rotating the picture, which makes it harder to see in a lot of circumstances. But let's say you were using PowerPoint for a marketing tool, you might want some pizzazz and some real motion and movement going on, but it's still good to know that all these options exist. The other thing you can do with PowerPoint is change the color of a particular picture. So if I wanted this to be red instead of blue, I can do that. If I wanted to change the hue of it, you have options to change the tone or the saturation. So I could take this to a grayscale all the way up to hyper emphasizing the color that's there. Plus, again, you have the options to actually change the color itself. Now, if you watched the previous video, you saw there were sections where there was highlighting on some of those callouts, and I actually used the set transparent color to do that, and I'll show you in just a minute how to do the callouts with those. The other cool feature you can use in PowerPoint, and I'm going to just add a new slide here and add another picture, but one that I can pull the background from, is that remove background feature. So let's say I want to use this ABA logo, but I don't want the red background there. I could hit remove background, and everything in purple is going to pull out. So it's sort of a tricky process to manipulate it, but if you frame it just right, it'll pull out those background pieces. And then what you want to do to get rid of the rest of the red is click on mark areas to remove. It sort of by default takes you to this screen. And you can kind of draw horizontal lines in the spots, vertical or horizontal depending on which way you're trying to go, to illustrate to it what you wanted to get rid of. Now, if you were really, really meticulous, you probably could have gotten the letters in between American Bar Association to go away, but that takes a whole lot more patience than I have. So we still could get that ABA logo though without the red. Once you've got everything marked purple that you want to get rid of, then you click Keep Changes. And unfortunately, it didn't work out so well in this situation, but you might be able to play with the color of it and bump up the saturation or the tone. Apparently not in this one. Wasn't a great example, but you can see there it kind of works. It gets rid of the background and you've got some of the remnants of that ABA logo left. But despite the fact that that was a terrible example of how to do this, you still see the functionality of how to remove the background. So, you know, when you have a particular item and you just want that item, not the background, that works really well. I'm going to undo this because I want to show you another way to manipulate pictures. And I'm actually just going to go ahead and pull out this whole picture and put another one in that is surrounded by white, because that's even easier to get rid of the background. Sometimes you just want the picture there and not the white background. So if we use, for example, the simple logo here, everything inside of this square is going to have a white background to it. If I wanted to get rid of that, I could click on Remove Background and pull out the frame just enough to get all of the logo in there. So now I have the whole logo covered. Now notice in the center there it's purple, so I'm going to click Mark Areas to Keep and just go across this whole center here because I want all of that included, even the white areas inside of there. Although you could leave those out if you wanted to. And I'm going to hit Keep Changes. Now let's say I changed the background color of this slide. So you would go to Design and Background Styles, and let's say I just made it blue, right? Or black. Now I don't have that white box inside of surrounding the circular logo. So if I went back to the picture tools and did the discard all changes, see what I mean about the white box? It looks really unappealing because you have this weird white box sitting on a black background. So if you go through the remove background process, which I won't do again because I already illustrated it to you, you get that nice, just the round logo by itself. Now the other way to do this is to click on color and go to set transparent color, and you're going to see how the mouse was a little, almost looks like a dry erase marker or something like that. You're going to click in the white, and it's going to try to figure out how to eliminate all of the white space. Now you'll note in this particular picture it's not doing a very great job because it's very jagged and doesn't work very well. So if you're having trouble with setting the transparent color, switch over to removing the background and see if that works better to remove whatever color it is that you don't want in a particular picture. Okay, so I'm going to undo that and set this back. And then I want to show you one more thing about graphics on a PowerPoint screen. Sometimes I know a lot of people use the grid. To me, that's way too much work. Meaning the grid, you know, the little lines on the screen so that you can put things perfectly in the middle. That's just entirely too much work. So if you go up here to align, you can actually center and move the object into the middle of the screen just by clicking on it, and under this picture tools option you get align, and that way you have a nice in the middle perfectly centered image to put on your particular slide. So again, there are just so many features in PowerPoint that are super user friendly and super easy to use. So the next thing I want to show you is how to put in a map and use a map to illustrate information. So if you remember from the previous video, the example was a map of city streets, and we had the car moving, the arrows in the car moving on the map. So let's say you don't even have the map accessible to you. In other words, you don't have a saved image of the map on your computer. That is no problem at all. That's one of the easiest things to grab off the internet. So if I went to a Google screen, and let's say I did a map of Clearwater, Florida, you would get any number of, you know, MapQuest or Google Maps or several of those. So I'm going to pick the Google Maps, and I'm going to sort of slide my screen over here just a little bit so that I get some streets. Doesn't matter for purposes of this exercise, but of course if you had a specific address, you could put that specific address in and then zoom in or zoom out depending on how detailed you want that to be. So let's see, let's center this just a little bit more. And then what you want to grab is the snipping tool on your computer, or if you have an older computer with, I would guess that most of you have a newer computer, but if you have an older computer, you can use the print screen function on your keyboard. But if you click on this snipping tool, it opens up this little program that allows you to highlight and grab images off of your screen. So let's say I want all of this area here encompassing the CJC all the way down over to Roosevelt Boulevard, right? So I just highlight that area that I want and let go, and then I get this great image of what I just pulled off of the internet. And so you just click copy here, and I'm going to click back into my PowerPoint, and I'm going to right click and put paste. And you'll see what it does is it actually puts the image in there at whatever size it is. I can see this because I'm so accustomed to working with PowerPoint, but the slide actually ends right here, and I can see that because of the shadow of the slide. So what you want to do is click on your image, go to picture tools, and then you're just going to reduce the size of the picture itself so that it actually fits on the slide. You could also just grab the corner and reduce it if you're not patient enough to click. And so being the type A that I am, I'm going to go ahead and stick this in the middle of the screen so that I can work with it. So in order to use those arrows to illustrate, you know, the direction a car has traveled or whatever the case might be. You just are going to put those in one by one and use the animations to manipulate them and make them work. So we're going to go over here to Insert, and we're going to click on Shapes, and we're going to pick a one direction arrow, and then draw your arrow on the screen. Now you'll note that that arrow is thin, blue, and hard to see. So what you want to do is, while you're clicked on the arrow, come up here to Drawing Tools, and we're going to change the weight of that arrow, and we're also going to change the color so that it's nice and thick and easy to see. So I'm going to take it up to 4.5, and I'm going to take it to a red color so that it's easy to see. Okay? Easy enough, right? And then you can grab these ends and, you know, sort of move them over a little bit to make them more in line with the street or whatever you need to do to make that all look pretty and polished. So one thing I want to point out here is that you could repeat that whole process again, meaning you go Insert, Shape, change the weight, change the color, or you, while you're clicked on this arrow, you can just do Control C as in cat and then Control V as in Victor on your keyboard, and now I have another arrow that's already formatted that I can just manipulate into place for the next portion of our little map that we're traveling on here. So you can kind of save yourself the trouble of having to go through all those steps again. So again, if I just hit Control V, because now the arrow is the most recent thing I've copied, pull this over, pull the end of it where I want it to go, which is right here, pull the beginning of it where I want it to go, which is right here. Let's say where this guy drives himself into the lake. There you go, right? So now you've got your arrows in place. The next step is to add the animation, bottom to top, left to right, and then top to bottom, so that it actually moves as you're talking about that motion. So I'm going to show you how to do that, which is also super simple. So you click here on this first arrow, and you can see you're on that arrow because it gets little dots on the ends of the lines there. So then we're going to go to Animations, and we're going to pick Wipe. Now I like to be able to see what the animations are, so I always select Animation Pane, which opens up this optional pane over here on the right hand side and allows you to see what's been set on the image itself. So if we click down and go to Effect Options, you can change the direction, and this is how on the next one we're going to make it go from left to right. So you can also, if you wanted the timing, you know, if you wanted it to be slower because you were going to talk about this for 5 seconds or 10 seconds, you could change the speed of that, and it would slowly move that arrow up and give you a little bit of time to talk about it. So this is very manipulable as well. So again, we're going to opt for Wipe, but you'll see it defaults from bottom to top. So what we're going to do is go back in here to Effect Options and change it to From Left so that it goes from left to right. And then grab this third arrow, click on Wipe, and again it's coming from bottom to top because that's the default. So again, we'll change the Effect Options to From Top to Bottom and hit OK. So if we put this in display mode, all you see first is the map, right? Then when you click, that first arrow is going to come up, and remember we set that one to move very slowly. And then you click again, and you could talk about that piece of the map, and you click again and talk about the third movement made. You could also make these run together. So right now you can see the orange is on Start on Click. If you did Start with Previous, it would run with the first arrow. So again, if we put it in slide mode, as soon as you clicked once, it would run all of those arrows, and unfortunately you run the risk of it doing what it did just then, which was putting the two that were moving quickly up faster than the one that was moving slowly. So you kind of have to look at that, but you want to make sure you're putting it in actual presentation mode and playing it for yourself so that you can see what is going on. So I'm going to change these back to start on click so that I have control over them. And then I'm going to show you how to put in that graphic. So to put in a graphic and make it move with the arrows, you insert the clip art first, and then we're going to add an animation to it called a motion path. So we're going to go to Insert, Clip Art. It's going to bring up another pane on the right here. And so we're just going to search for car. And I'm just going to pick the first car that comes up. Now you could get an actual picture of the actual car you are talking about, any number of things, right? So I'm going to make him smaller because he's got to be reasonably to scale with the road. And then if you see the green arrow here, we can actually just grab that and turn him so that he's moving in the direction of the arrow. It's very important in adding this next step, the motion path, that you're clicked on the object itself that you want to move. So once you've clicked on the object itself, now we're going to go back to animations. We're going to go down to lines. So you're just going to add that line in on top of the arrow. And this, don't worry, this isn't going to show up when you are in display mode. It just shows up now to show you what it's supposed to do. Okay, so the green arrow, which it's a little hard to see, but the green arrow is over the car right here, and the red arrow is at the end of my actual arrow, and I'm going to shorten it just a little bit. And so it starts where it's green and ends where it's red. So if I put this in display mode from this current slide, so we're just seeing this one, you've got the arrow comes up first, and then you got the second arrow and the third, and then now our car is going to move on the motion path, but it's just another step to get that to go in line with the arrow as it goes. So what we're going to do is that if you see on the screen, those different animations are numbered in connection. So number 4 is that motion path we just put in for the car, and it correlates to number 4 over here. So we're going to take this, make sure we're clicked on that, and we're going to reorder it up with the straight arrow, and we're going to say start with previous, right? So it's going to start at the same time as that second arrow. But see the bars here that show how long this runs? If you look, that motion path is only supposed to run for 2 seconds, and the arrow runs for 5, which means they're not going to run at the exact same time. So I'm going to change the timing on that first arrow to 2 seconds so that they run at the same pace. So if I go from current slide here, the arrow should go up and the car should go with it. And there it goes. So then it would just be a matter of adding in a second motion path for our little car. So to get our car to follow along the next arrow, what you want to do is click on the car, make sure you've got that object clicked, and you're going to go to animations, and this time we're going to go to add animation, and we're going to go to more motion paths down here, and we're going to select the option for right. So once you select that and hit OK, you see it actually puts the motion path down here, right? All we're going to do is drag that up on top of the next arrow with the green at the starting point of the arrow and the red at the ending point of the arrow. And then we're going to add animation again and do more motion paths, and this time we're going to do the option for down. By the way, while we're in here, you see you can actually do these turns. Sometimes those are a little tricky though, especially when you're trying to conform to an exact map. But you'll see if I move my mouse here, there are a ton of options to make things move on a particular path. But we're going to stick with that down. And again, it's going to put it attached right to the image here. So you're just going to grab it and stick it on top of the next arrow. Again, green's our starting point, red's our ending point. And put it there. So now what you need to do is sync up those motion paths with the arrows if you want them to go at the same time. So we're going to grab the first motion path and reorder it under the first arrow and change it to start with previous. So now that the car is going to move with the arrow on that one. Same thing with the next motion path. We're just going to push it up one so that it goes with this arrow, and we're going to do start with previous. And you'll note here these don't match up, so the car is going to take longer to travel than the arrow. You could adjust either of those by going to effect options and changing the speed of them so that they're the same. And then the last piece here would be to change that third one to start with previous. So let me show you what that looks like now that we're in the actual presentation. So when we click once, the car and the arrow go at the same time. We click 2, car's a little slower than the arrow this time. 3, again, car's a little slower than the arrow, right? So you can also change the direction of your little guy here, but that gets a little complicated, and so sometimes actually you're better off without the graphic itself. You're just better off with the arrows, and you can show an image of the vehicle separately, or maybe someone's on a bicycle or walking or whatever it might be. But the adding the image makes it a little more complicated, but you can still use the arrows to illustrate where things are going. Okay, let's do the next piece I promised you, which is to add callouts. Callouts are much easier than people typically think. What I'm going to do is pull up a document here that I have, and it's just a simple agreement for attorney's fees, because it was something I had convenient and was easy to pull up. The key to callouts is that you need to change this Word document into images so that you can put them into PowerPoint and manipulate them. So we're going to go back to that snipping tool that we used before and pull content from the Word document into an image. So we're going to click New, and I'm just going to grab the content from this whole first page. So I'm going to highlight it like this, and now I have an image of this agreement for legal services. So just like we did with the map, we're going to hit copy. We're going to go back to PowerPoint, and we're going to paste it in here. And again, it's going to put it in there at the actual size. So you're going to have to grab the corner here or go to that picture tools option and reduce it so that it fits on the screen. I'm going to go a little bit bigger because remember, we want to make sure as many people as possible can see it. And then pop it into the middle and the center there. Now that we've got it centered, what we want to do is go back to the Word document and specifically grab the pieces that we want to highlight in callouts. So let's say that paragraph 2 is being challenged. So we would click on the snipping tool, we're going to hit New, and we're just going to highlight paragraph 2 this time. So again, it's going to give me an image of paragraph 2. So I'm going to hit copy. I'm going to go back to PowerPoint, and on that very same slide, I'm going to hit Control V or paste to put that in there. Now the great thing about this is the snipping tool actually has pretty good quality in terms of not pixelating it too bad. So you can pull out that content and show the viewer more specifically what it says. Now if I wanted to distinguish this, I could put an outline on the image itself. And of course the default outline is black, so we're going to change it to a color so we can actually see it. Let's see, let's go with blue, and then let's make it nice and thick so we can see it, right? Because we have a black background here. And then I personally would move this up just a bit so that we can see where it comes from. And then you can add in a little line, you know, from the corner of your call out to the source of the content so that it has that look of a call out. And then, so with that line, we're going to make that thick and blue, just like the outline on it, so that it all lines up and looks the same, right? So you just stretch this out just a tad more to make it sit in that call out just like that. And now we have a super easy call out showing the contents of paragraph 2. And that's as difficult as call outs get. They really are very simple. The other thing you can do, well, there are two other things really you can do with call outs. One is to create the effect of highlighting. Let me show you that, and then I'll show you the second trick, which is to add text to the call out to add emphasis. So if you wanted to make this look like it was highlighted as you are reading it, you would go to Insert, Shapes, and we're going to pick a rectangle because that's the easiest shape to get around words. And we're going to put a rectangle around the first line as tight on the letters as you can get it. So I'm actually not even going to worry about that G being stuck out there. Don't panic. We're going to fix it so that you can see through it. So you're going to click on Drawing Tools, and we're going to change this to, I would assume, yellow, right? That's what most people want their outlining color to be, highlighting, excuse me. And we're going to just get rid of the outline. Then we're going to click on, once we've got the box yellow, we're going to click on Shape Fill again and go to Gradient and More Gradients. And this actually pops up a box that then gives us the option to mess with the transparency. So we're going to bump up the transparency of that box until you feel like it's highlighted enough but you can adequately see the letters through it. It's somewhere in this 50 to 70% range that it looks like there's enough color there that you can see it's highlighted, but you can also see through it to see the language. So once you have that all set up, you can click Close, and then we're going to add an animation to this, just like we were doing with the arrows, that allows it to wipe in and show that as almost actively being highlighted as you talk about it. So you want to go to Effect Options, right, and make this happen from left to right so that it looks like someone's highlighting it from left to right as you would read it. Now again, like I said with the arrows, you could go through that whole process for the next line, but that would take you quite a bit of time. You can just copy and paste our nice little opaque text box and expand it to finish the second line there. And what you'll see is you get a number 1 and a number 2, which indicates it's already set in there for us, the animation options and the wipe. And so I'm going to copy it again, paste it one more time, and do this last piece, and then shorten it way down tight on that last bit of language. And so if I put this in animation view, or sorry, in presentation view for you, you get the call out, and then you can say highlight line by line as you're reading it to the viewer what that actually says. So call outs are easy to do, and it's easy to add extra fun things to them as well. If you didn't want that call out to appear until you were ready, in other words, you wanted to show the whole first page at the very beginning, click on the box that your call out is in, the image that your call out is in, and the line. And what I did to get those two highlighted at the same time was I just held the Control key on my keyboard, clicked one and then the other, and we're going to go to Animations, And I would just do appear. Some people get a little crazy with animations and it becomes too much. But if you look over here in the pane, what it did was add that at the end. So we need to reorder those, and you'll see the two are highlighted together. When I reorder, it's going to take them together and push them all the way to the top. So again, I'm going to put it back in presentation mode and show you. So what you get first is the page. Then you click once and you get the call out, and then you could click through each of those lines to make them look like they're highlighted. The other thing you can do is add a shape and add text to it to add emphasis to a particular piece of information. So let's say I really want to add emphasis on this line. You could just insert a shape and then put edit text and type in there what you want the jury to know that applies to that call out. And those shapes, if you click on drawing tools, you could change the color of them, you can change the effect of them, and just pick the one that works best for you, and bearing in mind that some colors are more effective than others. So call outs are super easy to do. They're very effective. They make it very easy for the viewer to see what you're talking about. They're really, really good stuff. So as you can see, there are really effective ways to use PowerPoint that don't involve any really particularly fancy skills. I actually could go on and on about other ideas that I have for uses of PowerPoint, and I've seen people do really cool, really interesting things with it. So have fun, play around, use the program, and remember that if you run into a problem, you can always use the help function in PowerPoint, which is accessible right here through this little question mark, or you can go on the internet and look for a YouTube video or some other kind of instructions on how to do something. But don't discount the value of a program that's already on your computer. The one warning I will give is that PowerPoint is not manipulable. So if you're in the middle of a presentation, you can't just up and change something as you're moving along. And that's why I wanted to make sure I included the YouTube link to Sanction, because that's a program that is completely manipulable in the middle of a presentation. So have fun playing in PowerPoint, and share this with the people who work in your office, because it really is a powerful tool, and it's something that you can use to create really effective courtroom presentations, mediation presentations, marketing presentations. It really is valuable, and it's an often overlooked program in law office.